Franks. Today, we're going to look for just a brief moment at a case sort of in between the very little change of post-Roman Italy, Spain, or North Africa, or extreme change like Roman Britain, by looking at the Franks. To begin with, the region we're looking at is the area that the Romans called Gaul, or Gallia. See it there on the map. This is the area that was conquered by Julius Caesar. It is most of what is today known as France, as well as its neighbors, western part of Germany, Switzerland, Belgium, and the southern Netherlands. Under the Romans, it was one of the richest territories they possessed, one of the most populous, probably about 20 million people living here in the 2nd century, and one that was very developed and integral to the Roman Empire. Now, Gaul directly bordered the core area of the German barbarians, living on the other side of the Rhine River, that northern military frontier. Among the tribes who lived there were the Franks. And the Franks were a fairly ordinary German tribe. They lived in the lower part of the Rhine in what's now Western Germany and the Netherlands. They had no traditions of having ever lived anywhere else. And when the Romans first arrived, there were already German speakers on both sides of the river. The Franks emerged during the period of Roman rule, but they're fairly obscure for much of their earliest centuries. They do not have a single king or a united command. They do have a name, the Frank, which comes from their characteristic weapon, the Francesca. You can see a Francesca here. It's a throwing axe, more or less what we would call a tomahawk in North America. Now, the Franks live in many small tribes. You can see them here in green. And because they were close to the Roman frontier, a lot of them served in the Roman army, some of them rising up to be major generals, many more, of course, being just foot infantry. In fact, this segment of the Roman frontier probably saw an almost entirely German army, almost all of the Germans being Franks. And when the Roman frontiers collapse, when the Huns move west, the army along the lower Rhine stays put. Whether or not they continue to think of themselves as Roman, though, is a different question. As Roman rule disappears, some of these Frankish groups who had had training as Roman soldiers begin to gradually extend their power southward. Probably the strongest of these Frankish leaders is a man named Childeric. Childeric is the son of Merovech, or according to later legend, the Quinatar. Quinatar is a sea monster. His mother had gone to take a bath in the sea. This strange tentacled creature had come up and had its monstrous way with her. 9 months later, she gave birth to a son, if you want to believe it. Anyway, Childeric ruled basically what's now Belgium and the extreme north of France from the city of Cambrai. Childeric worshipped the old gods. Childeric's descendants would form a family named after his father of the Merovingians. And Childeric we know a little bit about how he died. Died in 481, and his tomb and his body was found. Around it were several hundred horses that had been sacrificed, as well as a lot of treasure. You may notice this picture of some of the treasures is a drawing, as it was found in, I believe, 1644. It was on display for almost 200 years in a museum. It was broken into, the entire treasure was stolen and never seen again. Because it was stolen before photography had been invented, we only have drawings. Now, Childeric, when he dies, leaves a son, Clovis. Clovis is 15 years old. He's inherited power, but he's 15. Takes him a while to secure his power over his father's group of Franks, known as the Salian Franks. And within a few years, not only has he secured control, he's begun to expand. He conquers an area in the north of what's now France, ruled by a Roman general named Syagrius, and adds that to his territory. He gradually eliminates all of those other Frankish kings and warlords. It takes him about 15 years until he is the sole control of northern Gaul. Many of the other Frankish rulers were related to him and his father, whether directly as cousins or by marriage, and he kills them all. Later on, it's said that he would go around saying it was so sad that he had no living relatives. Of course, he had killed most of his cousins, so I don't know how bad we should feel about him for that. Next, he moves and attacks a tribe called the Alemanni, who lived further up the Rhine, again divided between what's today France and Germany. And from there, he will move on to attack the Visigoths in southern Gaul. And in 507, drives them out of Gaul into Spain, bringing all of Gaul under single rule. And it's a fairly swift campaign, 25 years, conquering a very large territory. Now, either immediately after he had conquered the Alemanni or immediately before he conquered the Visigoths, Clovis, who was a son of a man who worshipped the old gods, converted to Christianity. But unlike the other Germanic tribes and leaders, he converts to Roman Catholic Christianity. He, along with 3,000 of his followers, are baptized in the city of Rheims in northern France, declare themselves publicly to be Roman Catholics, that is, the same religion as the people they are conquering, and begins by this process to make it so that in his kingdom, in the Frankish kingdom, Romans and Franks have no religious difference or barrier to intermarriage, and the two groups will slowly begin to become one. After he is baptized as a Catholic, he is recognized as a Roman consul by the emperor, who sends him gifts from Constantinople. He also has written in Latin a new set of laws that are called the Laws of the Salian Franks. They're in Latin, but the Latin contains a lot of Germanic terminology and ideas, and it has in it a combination of Germanic ideas, Roman ideas, and Christian ideas. Some are new legal concepts, or rather, new legal concepts in terms of written law. Were-guild is a really important concept. There's no real prison system. There is, however, payment for injuries. If someone commits a murder, they pay a calculated amount based on the value of the person they killed to the family of the victim. These prices range by age, gender, and social status, so that the least valuable person is an elderly woman who is enslaved, the most valuable person being the king. Women are most valuable between the ages of 15 and 30, because then they can have children, and so on and so forth. Now, and the prices, when you calculate them, range in modern terms from a couple of $1,000s up to about $900,000. I mean, it's a system that does seek to punish as well as help the survivors. In this legal system, oaths are really, really important. You are to take, to prove innocence or guilt, you have to swear an oath. You bring people to court as guarantors for your oaths. And the more people you bring, the stronger your oath is seen. If you break an oath, you are now a criminal. You can become, under these laws, an outlaw, in which case anyone can kill you and you no longer have a were-guild. In general, the society depicted in these laws is extremely rural. There are lots and lots of laws about pigs, about stealing bees, things like that. Now, one of the concepts that shows up in here for the first time is something called the ordeal. And this is a really interesting concept. If everyone says you are guilty and you maintain your innocence, but you cannot prove your innocence. You have been accused of stealing a pig. You cannot, no evidence shows that you stole the pig other than everyone believes you did so. But you cannot prove the pig is not in your possession. You can agree to undergo an ordeal. And the way this goes, there's several different methods. One is the entire court will now adjourn and meet again in the church, where instead of the judge, a priest takes over. And the priest will be over a pot filled with boiling water. The person who claims innocence will be standing next to them. The priest will sprinkle holy water on the person, take their arm, plunge it into boiling water, pull it out very quickly. They'll then bandage up the person, and then they'll come back a week later. And if, when the bandages are removed, her person's skin is fine, they're uninjured, they will be determined to be innocent and all charges dropped. If, on the other hand, when the bandages are taken off, the person is injured, they're guilty, and whatever the punishment that is meant will happen to them. Another method is taking a piece of metal, heating it up in a fire, and then the same process happens, only now the person who's claiming to be innocent needs to grab the metal before being bandaged up. The same goes on. And this seems pretty barbaric. It's a really interesting legal concept for some very particular things. One, it shows a belief in a universal God. The belief is that no one will have seen your crime who's human, but God sees all, and God will know whether you're innocent or guilty. The old gods, whether Zeus or Jupiter or the Germanic gods of Woden and Thor and so on, do not have the ability to see everything. This implies a universal God in Christian. The other, possibly even more interesting thing is a study was done, all the records of court cases involving the ordeal. And in them, over 99% of the time, the person was found to be innocent. This is really interesting because why is that? And there's a logic here. There's a third person party, the priest, who is involved. And the priest will know something psychologically about the accused person. Only someone who absolutely believes that God knows they are innocent will agree to the ordeal. A person against whom accusations have been made, but there is no clear evidence of their guilt, who knows that they are guilty, will confess and hope to get a lesser punishment to avoid the ordeal. Only an innocent person would agree to the ordeal. Therefore, the priest, while spraying the holy water on the person, the priest who is controlling the temperature of the water will make sure that the innocent person is found innocent. It's really, really interesting. It has parallels to modern legal usage, for instance, of the death penalty, not as a way of executing people, but of convincing people who are guilty to agree to a lesser crime. It's a very interesting idea. Now, to get back to Clovis. Clovis dies 511 at the age of 45. His family will continue to rule for almost another 250 years. Indirect descendants will continue to rule France down to 1848. Now, his family, his direct descendants, are known as the Merovingians. They are also sometimes called the long-haired kings because this family has some very specific characteristics. Unlike other Franks or Romans, the men never cut their hair their entire lives, so they have extremely long hair. They also treat the kingdom as the property of the family. When the king dies, they will break up the land between his sons, sometimes two, sometimes three, sometimes four portions, which will then merge back together. The entire kingdom is considered family property. The sons and grandsons will expand the kingdom, reaching the Mediterranean in 534. While they are officially Christians, they practice polygamy. Kings usually have multiple wives, as well as slave concubines. And there's another very unusual fact about the family. Very few of them get old. They almost all die by the age of 45 or so, and that will have a major impact on their rule. The way they'll usually divide the kingdom is not really based on any natural geographic area way. Usually it'll be in roughly four portions. The northern or eastern part called Austrasia, which is northern Gaul, and territories on the other side of the Rhine. This area is going to become mostly German speaking. The second area, also in the north, the reddish area, that would be called Neustria, the New Kingdom, which is mostly Romance speaking, and is based around the city of Paris. It will become Neustria, it becomes the core of the Kingdom of France. The southern area, Aquitaine, that territory that had been taken from the Goths, and in green, the Kingdom of Burgundy, including much of western Switzerland. Now, in Gaul, under the Merovingians, you have this combination of Roman, German, and Christian influences. By 600 at the latest, it's really difficult to see who is Roman and who is Frankish. Names, German names are used by families that we know are purely Roman origin, and Roman names by families we know are purely Frankish. Christianity is spreading slowly through the society, but even as Gaul becomes more Christian, literacy gets less and less. Cities vanish. In fact, by 600 or so, there's probably only one city that we would call anything more than a village in the entire country, which is Marseille, the chief port down by the Mediterranean. Paris is probably the second largest place, and it's probably 2,000, maybe 3,000 people. Everything else, that even when it's still called a city, will usually just be a village where there is a bishop, a count, and maybe walls around it, basically where the government is based. There is continuing trade. You can see lots of evidence for this in archaeology. There's evidence of Syrians coming to Gaul under the Merovingians in lots of texts. And curiously, the Merovingian kings think they're part of the Roman Empire. They think the emperor in Constantinople is their ruler, even though he has almost no say in their government. Now, Merovingian family itself has that problem mentioned before. The kings die young. Kings who die at 40, even if they had gotten married, had their first children early, at say 16, the next king would be 24. If he dies soon after, his oldest son, may only be 5-6 years old. And you have this happen repeatedly, that children, 3, 4, 5-year-olds, come into power. And a 4-year-old cannot run a country. Instead, power begins to go to people who are called the mayors of the palace. The mayor of the palace, or major domo, is basically the chief of staff of the king. When the king is a child, the mayor is in charge of setting what actually happens day to day. And the mayors of the palace, the office of mayor of the palace slowly falls to a single family, descendants of a man named Pepin Herstal. The second Pepin will become mayor of the palace of all three kingdoms in 687. while the kings, the Merovingian kings, still exist on paper. The mayor is fully in charge. The mayors, who, their family, live to be 60, 70, 80 years old, will run the government and occasionally get the king to sign off on new laws. These later Merovingian kings, called the Do Nothing Kings, because it is said they only have the name of king and their long flowing hair, their long beard. They have an estate they live on and a cart pulled by oxen. The mayors of the palace make that even if the king is not a child, if he lives into adulthood, he is kept continuously drunk, given attractive women, so he is too busy drinking and having fun with beautiful women to actually care about running the kingdom. And it will work for more than a century until a problem arises. But we'll get